Welcome to another episode of Mental Health Mondays, where we talk to guests who are either professionals in the mental health space, advocates of mental health, or those that have lived with or experience a mental health challenge. And I am super excited today because this is our 1 year anniversary of doing this podcast. And that is really exciting. I just kept writing the episodes and then I was like, 52. I was like, wait, that's the amount of weeks that there's in a year. Yay! So, as a reminder, make sure if you're watching this on Facebook or LinkedIn or wherever we are, most likely you already subscribe to our page. But if you don't, please do. Or if you're on YouTube, make sure you mash down that button that says subscribe so that you don't miss another episode. So, I'm really excited to get rolling with our 1 year anniversary show. And I have my friend, Kristina. She's going to come up and I'm excited. I've been on her podcast. Now she's going to come on mine. So without further ado, Kristina, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you and congratulations. What an exciting time to be able to celebrate 1 year of having these kind of conversations.
Yeah, it's gone by really, really fast, but it's been really awesome. So I'm excited to have you on for the show today too.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I am an occupational therapist by background, and I worked previously with the military, specializing in brain injury and post-traumatic stress disorder. And currently still do some work, but I have stepped over into the tech side of things, working with veterans. And in my free time, I have, as you mentioned, my podcast, Rise Up Thriving, and then I'm also a trauma recovery specialist. So I work with women to help them rediscover who they are and write a new narrative after they've experienced trauma.
Wow, that's awesome. And I know, I mean, the conversation that you and I had on your podcast was really awesome. But what kind of led you into this kind of work?
My heart. I am a complex trauma survivor. I experienced childhood abuse. I experienced domestic violence. I also was a firsthand witness to a mass shooting. And in addition to that, as my personal experience, like I said, I've been an occupational therapist for, gosh, 18 years, I guess, now. And so I've seen so many different types of trauma, from orthopedic and physical trauma to, as I mentioned, a lot of the mental health implications and concussions from combat.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, just like your story. So thank you for sharing that. And I know it's been quite the journey in 18 years. That is amazing. But just knowing from your background going into doing what you're doing,
Mhm.
um, it can be potentially challenging and rewarding all in the same sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you and I even talked about that too, right? Is you have to be so conscientious of taking care of yourself at the same time so that you can hopefully prevent that caregiver burnout that can so often occur. And most of my career, we were also teaching many of the caregivers about that as well.
Yeah, I think it's like you give, and then you never really think about yourself until, like I've talked about before, even on here, as I hit kind of that brick wall of
Mhm.
what in the heck am I doing? And taking care of others is not helping take care of myself. So you have to be able to know how to receive, which is something that
Mm.
I am practicing.
And it's exactly that, right? It is a practice because it isn't easy. And I think so often as we've grown up and within society, it was taught that it's selfish to take care of your own needs or to say no because you're tired or you don't have the energy. And I've become much more mindful about energy exchange too. And if you don't have the positive energy to pour into somebody else, it's taking away from both of you.
Yeah. And I noticed that, I think the most when I was working at a corporate job, the energy, like how I absorbed it from other people, and I finally figured out the reason why I was like trying to be overly positive was to combat like the negativity
Mm,
that happened in a call center. And I uh, there was a moment that I was just like, man, I don't know if this is the right fit for me because, and I mean, I had been there for years and years and years, but I came to a point knowing what I do now of the whole energy exchange and how that affects you. Um, and I was like, I gotta get out of here. So I
call
know,
center is tough work too.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I mean, I was a supervisor, and so it was just, yeah, it was like
Mm,
so much energy. Like on the good days, it was really great because you're like, wow, I love these people. Like it's so great to be around all these people. And then on the bad days, you go home and there's nothing left for you, nothing left for your
mhm.
family. And that's not really fair. So
Yeah, absolutely.
can be definitely hard. So the work that you do with veterans specifically, do you want to tell a little bit more about that?
Now I am a project manager, so I've definitely switched hats, but I get to still use a lot of my clinical experience and background really from schooling because we get to test all of our mobile apps for the VA with veterans. So I get to still walk through that with them, make sure that it's meeting clinical needs, make sure that it's clinically relevant, and then we push those products to release so that, you know, any veteran can get their apps on the App Store that can help promote their healthcare, promote their health in general. We have some really great apps for mental health as well.
Nice. That's awesome. And then I know you also, like you said, you work with women.
Mhm.
Uh, Share a little bit more about how you work with them.
Yeah, again, going back to my background in occupational therapy, I found myself getting really burnout working in the kind of healing space and felt like there was a lot of expectation on me. And while I do have experience and many, many, many certifications within the trauma realm, I just didn't feel like I was well equipped to handle some of the most severe traumas and what a lot of women are struggling with. And I decided to shift from the healing piece of it to the growth piece. And I usually lay out this visual of like a hierarchy when it comes to healing, and similar to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So when you first experience a traumatic event or some kind of extreme stress or whatever that might look like for you, there's the foundational piece, which is that safety, stability, security. And you have to have that in place before you can even move to the next level of doing the healing work. And so in this healing space, people can choose to stay in whatever level of that they want to on this continuum. And so there are some people who don't believe that they need therapy, right? So they may just stay in survival mode and on meeting their physiological needs and meeting that safety every day in and day out, without realizing the physical impact and mental and emotional impact that takes on you. And then the next phase would be someone who does want to go to therapy. So they might be doing talk therapy or they might be pursuing some of these other modalities, such as EMDR, or in the military, they were doing prolonged exposure for quite a while. CBT, DBT, you know, all the different types of therapeutic modalities. And I think you can get stuck in that space as well. And I think you can get this mindset of needing to get to a certain place before you can be enough to pursue growth, which isn't true. But I kind of see then this next bar of growth, so personal growth and development, bleeding into the healing piece. So both can occur simultaneously, and I think do. It just depends what the mindset is of the person going through that experience.
Mhm.
So I work with the women then on this growth piece, And then I consider the top layer thriving. So it's really, what can I do to move myself forward? Because a lot of times in traditional psychotherapy, it's not about goals. It's not about where you're going next. It is, you'll go see the therapist weekly or every other week and you talk about your problems. And I just felt like I got to a place personally where I didn't want to talk about my problems anymore. I wanted to focus on where I wanted to go next. And so that's really where I implement strategies with women. I have what I call my RISE method. And so it's reflection, introspection, self awareness, and empowerment.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that you said in there that I was thinking about is especially in that therapy counseling space is you could get stuck because you're not hitting that whatever it might be for you. And I think that's really important for people to know is that like I guess in my brain, what I'm thinking is like that searching, like the next thing, the next
Mhm.
thing, the next thing, like what's the next thing to get me to feel comfortable where I'm at. But I also love that you said, even personally, you got to the place that you're like, I don't want to talk about my problems anymore. It's like, okay, can we move on now? Like, I'm
Mhm.
done. Like, I want to leave that in the past where it belongs, but I want to focus on my future. And the only way to get there is by adding in all these other aspects which you work with women to add in. And I know what popped into my head was like wins, daily wins,
Mm.
having like those 3 daily wins, which is something that I learned throughout um going through all my trauma and all of that too is like you have to focus on the positive things versus the negative things because too often we get stuck in those negative things. So I think that's
Mhm.
amazing that you have that growth and then also then you go into that thriving, which I think is the ultimate top of the pyramid where we want to be,
Mhm.
not stuck at this bottom layer. So that's amazing.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, on my podcast, I frequently say, I truly believe we're not here merely to survive, we're meant to thrive. And I think sometimes we do get caught in that trap of survival mode and we're just running on the hamster wheel, and it is exhausting and it is physiologically and physically draining, mentally draining when you're just trying to survive. And I don't think we always realize it when we're in the middle of it either. I think, like you said with your story, you hit a brick wall. And I think that is kind of what the wake up call is, or this precipice to burnout or to just completely getting knocked down by this survival mode. I myself was diagnosed with an autoimmune illness. And that's really what knocked me on my butt too, to have that wake up call that I was in survival mode because I didn't realize it at the time.
Yeah, and I think it's like um there can be cycles throughout life that happen too. Is like you have those highs and the lows,
Mhm.
and just because maybe you get to thriving doesn't always necessarily mean that you're not going to go down again. And because I feel like life in general is or can be you have your highs and your lows and
Absolutely.
pivotal moments and things change and but learning or understanding how to get to that high space, I think
Mhm.
that's a really important skill for people to have or to know or have somebody who can guide them there. So
You make such a good point. And yeah, as much as I love this visual of a hierarchy, I have this caveat that it really isn't a hierarchy because you will constantly, like you said, go back and forth because unfortunately we don't get to a place, even though I think a lot of us think we do in the healing journey, that we get to this place where it's like nothing's ever going to touch me again. I'm good. I've passed that, and life just isn't like that. But I think the more support we can give ourselves foundationally, like you said, we aren't going to drop or fall like quite so far, quite so hard as we have in the past when we have these support systems and these resources in place.
yeah, that's it's been a lot of my journey too. And I know like we had the conversation but it has been those like like you hit the bottom and then or that wall and then you climb up and you hit a peak and then it falls again and it's not a constant, but like you just said, is that I don't hit hard as much
Mm,
because I know that I have the resources available to me that I can move forward. And sometimes it's hard. Like you get, it's like driving down the street and you're like, what am I doing with my life? I don't understand. Why is this happening? And then you, in the back of your mind, you're like, okay, but you know how to get out of this now. Like
mm.
that's the cool part is acknowledging and recognizing the space that you have now access to all of these resources, but it can be really hard accessing them at sometimes too.
Yeah. Yeah. I love to use the analogy of building your toolbox. And I do think, you know, I love to have these tools in my toolbox because not every tool is going to be appropriate for every circumstance. So being able to, shift through and say, okay, well, this one didn't work this time, or this one isn't going to work for me. I need to find something else. But the more resources you have available, the more supported I think you feel.
Yeah, I love that too, the toolbox. It's like, let me pick out this one or this one or this one,
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I know, I mean, through the traumas that you experienced, what was it like getting your degree that shifted that, or what was one of the big shifts for you personally that you found was helpful?
Oh, that's a great question. Um, it's so interesting. Even as a young kid, I felt very persistent. So I know a lot of people bring attention to the idea of resilience, but I feel like even as a young child, I just had this drive and I just always picture like a bull, full speed ahead. And so, yes, while I was going through things that I would never want any child to experience, I don't know necessarily what it was, but it was something innate within me that I think gave me a really positive outlook and just kept me moving forward. And then I think really the first shift was moving away to college. So, really getting out of the house, being able to really, I think, ground myself, which I don't know if I would even really say I was grounded at that point in time, but start exploring the world and my own journey for myself.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think I do. I like how you say resilience and persistence. Like it could be, a little bit of both because we learn how to bounce back and be resilient, but you have to be persistent to actually get through that. What would you say for somebody who is, I mean, they're like at the bottom of the bottom and they're just like, I have no resilience, I have no persistence, like I don't even know if I want to get out of bed today. Like what was your or what is your thought around somebody that might be experiencing that?
Yeah, I've been there. I think first it's just knowing that you aren't alone, that so many people experience this idea of rock bottom. And unfortunately, a lot of people experience more than one. But I would say you have to make the choice. So you can choose, you can choose to stay there. And if you can't get out of bed today, then maybe that's okay. Maybe you actually need to be compassionate with yourself. Maybe you need to have some grace for yourself and consider what would happen if you continue to make the choice to stay in bed. So look at your options. And I think the other thing too is when we think, I have to get out of bed, or I can't stay here forever, wherever you might be emotionally, mentally, whatever it is, we think we have to do this big, grandiose thing, right? And something else that I say frequently on the podcast is one step at a time, one day at a time. And so maybe it's just setting up the smallest, tiniest goal. Maybe it's getting out of bed to brush your teeth, and that's enough for the day. And if you can just keep moving forward one little increment at a time, then you're going to start figuring out how to get back on your feet and find something that's going to compel you to get out of bed each day.
I love that. Yeah, so I've been doing these circle support groups, and it's for one is for grief and trauma and the other one is for mental wellness. And there was actually a woman that came in and she said that that was something that somebody had recommended to her, was writing a checklist, like even if it's just brushing your teeth and you can check that off, or getting out of bed and you can check that off. So that's amazing just in itself. Is it doesn't have to be like you get up, you go to work, all these things, right? It doesn't have to be this ginormous accomplishment that you have. It can be super simple, and that's okay. And for that day, it may be okay to just brush your teeth
Mhm.
or whatever it might be. And I know, like she had mentioned, that if you keep that checklist moving forward, if you're ever in these spaces again, you can pull them out and be like, oh, yeah, like it's okay to just have those small, tiny wins. So I love that you said that too.
Yeah, I really like the idea too that you said, celebrating when you do accomplish that one task or two tasks. Like, make sure that you take time to acknowledge the progress that you're making. And I think at the same time, another note I wanted to mention is don't expect yourself to feel so much better, because even though you do get up and brush your teeth, you may still experience grief and loss. And you probably are still going to experience those emotions of grief and loss. It's not going to go away because you got up and brushed your teeth. But at the end of the day, figuring out how to move forward is ultimately going to be what's best for you and for everyone around you.
Yeah, definitely. And moving forward through it versus just shoving it all down,
Mhm,
where now it's going to be stuck and stuck in there. And then eventually you'll have to go through it. So, yeah, that's
mhm,
really important to how do we move through it. And not neither of us are saying like you're going to get over it by any means. Like it becomes just this, what I call a roller coaster or a new journey, really, is
mhm.
you're like creating this new path or this new journey that you're probably always going to experience. And it's just gaining those resources, those tools, all the things that are going to be helpful for you, because we all experience things differently. And that's the important thing, is that how I experience something or Kristina experiences something is not how you're going to experience it. And so we know that fact, and use these if they work. If they don't, right, throw them in the
Yeah,
trash. That's what I tell
yeah.
people too. So
And it's okay if it doesn't work. It honestly, unfortunately, comes down to trial and error and figuring out what's best for you.
yeah, absolutely. So share a little bit more about, I know like I was on your podcast, but I
Mhm.
would love for you to share a little bit more about that too.
Yeah, thank you. I love my podcast. I just get to have the most special conversations. And so I publish an episode every week. And my basis for my podcast is stories of hope, healing, and resilience. And again, the podcast is called Rise Up Thriving. And the image that I have for my cover is like a rising phoenix. And that really became something that I held on to daily throughout my healing journey, especially acutely when leaving my marriage. And that I feel like is what kept me moving forward, was this idea of the rising phoenix, and that no matter how dark or difficult it became, that I could still rise from that. And so that's kind of where this whole concept was born from. And I get to interview women every month to share their stories about overcoming adversity. And I always request that my guests are on the other side. I don't want to bring someone on who's still in the middle of the trauma or the grief, because I don't want to re-traumatize my guests, but I also, again, don't want to put that energy out into the world either. And I want to give listeners tangible tips on how to move forward. And so I love the bravery and the courage and the vulnerability of all of my guests who are willing to share what they went through and how they got through it, and share that with others who might be struggling with a similar situation. And like you said, can use those nuggets and maybe benefit from that to move forward themselves.
It's so amazing. And I mean, it just gives that big piece of hope, the hope
Mhm.
that oftentimes is missing from the conversation. And so that's why when we were introduced, I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. So I think that's great that you and bringing in people who have gone through it to showcase that there is light on the other
Mhm.
side, and that I mean we all have a story, and I think that's really important for people to know so that they don't feel like they're going through it alone also. And
Right.
that's just amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other tips, tricks, or things that you wanted to chat about that we didn't?
Mm, yeah, I think some of my top messages are that you aren't alone when we are struggling with our own challenges. That's something that our mind chatter, will play games with us. It will tell us that we're on our own. It will tell us that nobody wants to hear about it and that we have to keep our struggles to ourselves. And it's all a lie. And I think that is just such an important takeaway to remember, that there are people that care about you. There are people that want to know when you're struggling, because if they don't know, they can't help you. And to add on to that, many of us love to help other people. And so if you don't share when you need support or when you need help, you're robbing two people of that gratitude and that generosity and that energy exchange that can occur when you do reach out, because other people, just like you, love to help, and you're getting the benefit then of receiving. So I think that's a big piece. And then just another one is remembering to have grace and compassion. And your healing journey doesn't need to look a certain way. It's really hard to drop the expectations of how fast it should happen, what it should look like, how you should be feeling or experiencing this process. And I really encourage you to drop all of the shoulds, drop all of the expectations that you might have, and just be kind to yourself, be gentle with yourself. And again, know that it's a process and you have so much support along the way, whether it's through friends and family or books or podcasts. There are so many different ways to get resources and tools these days.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. Stop shooting all over yourself. I heard
I
heard
know.
that one before.
I
But no,
love it.
I think that's so important, is that we're not mind readers, and
Mhm.
if you need help, although it can be challenging and sometimes hard, it's important. And being able to, I love how you said that energy, you're between two people that you want to be able to help, and you as a person that might be struggling needs to receive. And so that's really amazing. If anybody wants to work with you, how can they find you?
Yeah, I'm in the process of redoing my website right now, so that will be coming. But I'm most active on Instagram. So Instagram, my personal page is at rise_with_Kristina, or yes, in the link below. Or you can also find me on the podcast page, which is Rise Up Thriving.
Awesome. I'm gonna write that, rise up. Let's see if I can type it without, there we go. Rise up thriving. Rise up thriving. Cool. Yeah. Awesome. Well, I am so glad that you were able to come on today and for the 1 year celebration of the Mental Health Monday podcast show. So thank you so much. And I just thought of somebody that I'm going to connect you with that should be on your podcast too. So
Wonderful. Yeah, if
yeah.
anyone on here wants to share their story on the podcast, please reach out to me. I love having guests and I need more. So all year long. So anytime that you feel like your story might help somebody else, let me know. Or if you have someone that you would like their story on the podcast, please reach out. And congratulations again, Kelli. I'm just so honored to be here, but also really impressed by all of the work you're doing and the messages that you're sharing with the world.
Awesome. Well, thank you. I appreciate that
Yes.
too. And I'm so glad you were able to join me today.
Thank you. I am too.
Yeah. All right, y'all. That was another amazing episode of Mental Health Mondays, where we talk to guests who are either professionals in the mental health space, those that live with or experience a mental health challenge, or mental health advocates. And as a reminder, make sure you hit the subscribe button if you're watching this on YouTube. Hopefully, if you're watching it on LinkedIn or Facebook, you already follow us. But if you don't, follow us and share this information with anybody that you think that might need it, might need to work with Kristina. I'm telling you, she's amazing, or you want to be a guest on her podcast. It is an honor to be able to share the energy and be on each other's podcasts, which has happened a lot with this show, is that I have guests on and then I'm on their shows and all, good energy back and forth. But as a reminder, BCC Evolution is a 501c3 nonprofit. I didn't wear my Warrior for Mental Health shirt today, but I wanted to remind you that we are still doing our Everesting climb and challenge and kicker. So we registered. I went to sign up. And in my mind, I was like, yeah, it's like 5.5 miles, right? It is 30 miles. We're climbing up a mountain 30 miles. 13 times. I know I don't have enough fingers to show you 13 times, but it is equaling 30 miles. And in my brain, I was like, yeah, it's like 5.5 miles. We're fine. It'll be fine. 30 miles. It is a total of 30 miles. So I'm going to have to get myself into shape, but we need your help and your support still. We are trying to raise, not trying, we are going to raise. It's all about the words, people. We're going to raise $60,000, and all of that goes to mental health and suicide prevention education. But we need your help. So this is the easiest way. You can text CLIMB for MIND to 44321, or you can go to the Give Lively page. You can actually go to the BCC Evolution website and you can find it there. There's lots of different ways. But if you want to learn more about it, you can also just go to the 29029everesting.com and see how challenging it's going to be, because it's going to be amazing. And we are going to do it in the name of mental health and suicide prevention education. I'm in the process of designing the shirts, which has been really fun. So the front logo is going to be the BCC Evolution. Where is it? This side. Our logo. So our heart logo is going to be the front of our shirts. And then we're actually going to put people's names in the shirt. Somebody who has either died by suicide, another mental health challenge, substance abuse, or maybe you want to just showcase somebody that is a warrior themselves, that they are living with and fighting through their mental health challenge. We would be honored to put their name on there. So with $100 donation or more, you can put somebody's name in our logo, and we'll share their story. We'll honor their memory, and we will showcase them as we do this climb and before we do the climb. We're already starting to add names into the shirt, and we'll start sharing those stories on all of our Mental Health Monday podcast show. So if you go now, you can literally just text CLIMB for MIND to 44321 and donate $100 or more to get a name in our logo. Or maybe you're a business or a company and you want to be sponsored and you want your logo on the back of our t-shirt. We are also starting to collect those. We've already gotten we have 3 logos that are going to go on the back currently. But if you're a business with $1,000 or more sponsored, then you get your logo on the backs of our t-shirts. So you can show the world that your business is linking arms with mental health and suicide prevention education. So again, we're raising $60,000. The easiest way is just texting CLIMB, the number 4 MIND to 44321, and or going to BCC evolution.org and /donate. All the information there is on our donation page. So you can learn more about what we're doing. And I think I'm actually going to add like a whole separate page on our website, because now that I'm like actually officially doing it and I realize that it's 30 miles that I'm going to climb, hopefully I can inspire some of you to make your own journey and know that you can do whatever you put your mind to, because there is no option in my mind to not climb the 13 different times to hit that 29,029. And I will literally drag myself up the mountain if I have to showcase that it's important to talk about mental health and suicide. So thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you being here and or listening, because again, this podcast goes out to 7 different streaming platforms. And so I should probably remind myself that not everybody can see us. So I probably need to tell a little bit more in detail, but thank you so much. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure that you show up here next week at 11 a.m. Mountain Standard Time for the next episode. And yay to 1 year celebration. All right, y'all. Have a great day.